Good morning. Happy New Year. We're back. I'm speaking today with Dr. Lukisha Gibbs. She's here and she's going to help us with everything that's happening today, these days with school. Just when you thought students had schedules and patterns, once again, plans change. So Dr. Gibbs will speak with us about winter break, school reentry after winter break, and school reentry during the time of Omicron. She's going to self-introduce in just a minute, but before she does that, I want to remind you that you can place questions or comments in the comment section, and I will pull them up and she will address them live on air. So if you're joining us live, please do that. Put your questions or comments in the comment section and we'll address them. Good morning, Lukisha.
Good morning, Kamila. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you. Okay. We have questions. I know we have questions. Originally, we were going to just talk about what it's like having one term under our belts post virtual schooling. And we were going to talk about all of that stuff. But now, since winter break and the conclusion of that one term, we're into a whole new thing with this Omicron virus. Some schools today are going virtual for the first time this school year. Some have delayed reentry. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And I know that a lot of parents are anxious about that. So we want to talk about that. Originally, that's what we're going to do. But just when we thought that the patterns and stuff were good, they're changing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and let us know what you're seeing. And we're going to jump right on into what happened last term, some of the adjustment issues, and what we can expect to see now.
Absolutely. So my name is Lukisha Barrera Gibbs, and I have to roll my R's and include that name or my dad will get me. Like, you didn't say my name. So I have been in education for over 20 years, have supported students from elementary through college. I'm currently an administrator in a secondary school, and I'm also a parent education coach. I reside in the DMV area, and I support families in this area specifically. I particularly work with students 7th through 12th grade. And so, again, we're in a secondary school program. And I love what I do. I support all kinds of educational needs as an administrator and as a parenting coach, whether it's students who have different learning needs or students who are learning different languages who are new to this area. In my particular area, we get a lot of students who are migrating from different parts of the world, or we have a high military area here. So we've got all kinds of transitioning happening all the time. So that's what I do. I have 2 teens of my own, a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, 12-year-old boy and 14-year-old boy. And we reside in this area. And I'm seeing a lot of and experiencing a lot of what our families are going through, not only as a person in the school environment, but as a parent.
Thank you. You're exactly our demographic. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, DMV stands for DC, Washington, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So when she says she's from the DMV area, she means she's from that part of the country in the USA on the East Coast, because we have people from all over this country and international guests. Let's talk about the first term, and then we're going to jump into Omicron. The first term, we had students who went back to school who some of them hadn't been in school in a year and a half. Some of them had been in and out and in and out. And a lot of them missed important milestones. They transitioned while virtually or in this hybrid form and really didn't receive the support that they should have for those times in their lives and some of the natural personal development phases. What were you seeing from students and parents and educators in relation to this?
It's very interesting that you mentioned that. I think that depending on the population, some schools may have had some small portions of students and may have piloted small groups, but as a whole, our systems were shut down, I would say, for that entire period, as you mentioned. What I, as an educator myself and my colleagues, one of the things that we really reflected on is how do we transition kids back? So, people in the school business, we have been working, we're essential. We've been working throughout the whole time, throughout the summer, last summer, coming up with ways to make our students transition, to address their transition. The reality is we have kids who, I've got middle schoolers who have came straight from elementary and they were walking in line with their teacher and they're not accustomed to, all right, now go to the cafeteria on your own or transition to multiple classes. And then I have students who they never, they were never high school students and now they're in high school and trying to navigate the life of a high school student. So transition activities and keeping transition in mind was so important for us and so important for our families to get our kids just really thinking about what to expect. All right. And so a lot of what we did was just making sure that kids were really prepared to know what to expect, such as we took a lot of videos of where they were going to be in terms of, okay, this is what your locker looks like, or this is where the library is, this is what the hallways, I mean, those simple things. And we don't really think about the environmental day to day that kids are going to experience were some ways that we prepared them. So we had a lot of virtual tours going through the building. We had some activities before the actual first day of school, getting them in the building and going through their schedule. So those are some of the things that we did on the onset of getting ready for our kids to come back to school. But as they came back and we're looking at that first quarter, that first semester, it was obviously very different. I mean, none of us really knew what to expect. I mean, we planned for it, but not even our parents, our kids necessarily knew what to expect. I mean, we're dealing with kids who they wake up and they jump into their Zoom class or they jump into their Schoology or their Google class or whatever the Google Meet class they had. And now we have students who have to wake up extra early and have to get ready and be outside and stand at a bus stop or go through a commuting experience to then prepare, because preparing for school is before you actually get to the building.
Yes.
So those are some of the challenges that we saw with our students in terms of just getting ready to start the day and the physical, what it takes to physically get out of the house and get into the building was also a challenge for many, and it was exciting for most, of course.
Now, I've heard from a lot of parents that their children were anxious returning to school, or they didn't know that their children were anxious until further along into the semester when there were behavioral or academic issues. And then, the families delved into them and they found out that their children were anxious. What were you seeing and how could we address that? Because I'm imagining that those students and more are going to become even more so anxious or exhibit other issues that we should be prepared to look for since we're returning to that state. Or some people are, some people aren't. So what have you seen and what do you suggest?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, the anxiety is real. It's not just real from kids, but real from parents. We have parents in the past, if there's a situation at school, they would allow the school to work it out. And what I've seen more and more common, becoming more and more common, is parents want to come to school and get their kids and save them quickly because that's what they did at home.
Mhm.
And our kids are, for the most part, they spent most of their time in their home with their families or with their caregivers, and they're not necessarily in the routine of socialization with their peers and spending seven, sometimes 8 or more hours, depending on their after school activities or needs, with other children. And problem solving as an adolescent is definitely, can definitely be an interesting experience for our young people. So all of that, coupled with the unknown, coupled with just going through the transitions, getting to class. Again, as I said earlier, waking up, starting the day, getting out, that's all of that is how a lot of our kids were really, really struggling with the anxiety of, well, what is my day going to be like? I mean, I'm used to laying back in the bed and looking into my classroom. Now I have to sit up in a chair, and if you think about it, just sitting for whether it's 45 minutes or 90 minutes, their bodies are not used to that. And so we saw a whole lot of kids who are just really not used to sitting up, as simple as that. So yes, we saw a lot of, and we see a lot of our kids are anxious about not only their day to day, but am I ready for the next step? Am I ready for the grade level that I'm in? Am I ready to take that AP test? Am I ready to take that final exam, or the PSATs or the SATs that are now in person that they were exempt last year to do? So all of these newness or the unknown heightened some anxiety. Now, some of the things that we can do as parents and educators is really to really be in tune and be expecting it, and kind of not make it an abnormal, but the new normal, and normalize, so that our kids can feel like there's nothing wrong with them. This is we are all going through lots of changes. We have never dealt with this level of grief in the before. And when I say grief, whether it's our young people who have lost loved ones due to the pandemic or other situations, whether it's the grief of not attending, homecoming last year, or the grief of your friends left and they went off to college, or you never saw them again because they were the upperclassmen, and those friendships and relationships, if you were in a club, the club no longer either exists, or it just hasn't evolved in membership. So there are lots of different, we have to look at grief differently because our young people have experienced a significant amount of loss. So just being aware and being in tune, and being ready to listen, and just really making sure that we are paying attention to not only these transitions that they're going through and the anxiety they're going through, but the grief that they've experienced.
Thank you. I really want to reiterate what you said. Normalize the uncomfortable feelings, the sense of grief and loss. If we can do that, then that goes a long way towards helping them. We have a couple of comments. I'm going to put one up here. J Rich 37 has made a couple of comments, but I really want to, you to address this one. Says, yes, anxiety is real for staff working in schools too, because right now we've just been talking about the students, and we touched upon the parents and how parents have to transition from doing as they did in the home, in the school, now that we've transitioned back to school. But let's talk a little bit about the staff's anxiety and how that may affect the students.
Absolutely. I would say, as an educator, and I think most of my colleagues would say that educators, we seem to have type A syndrome, perfectionist. We want to do our best. We want to make sure that we're doing what's best for our kids. And when we find ourselves in an environment where we have no control of where our kids are in relation to whether it's a learning loss or a missed learning opportunity because we weren't able to spiral back as much as we are accustomed to in person, or really helping them to close some gaps. Those are things that cause teachers to stay up at night when you know that there are things you can do to really help your kids move forward, but you're not able to the way you have done in the past. So yes, the anxiety is real. Teachers, again, put a lot of pressure on themselves. We want our kids to thrive. And what I've learned is we can't measure the success the way we did in the past, right? So success can be that the kid showed up to class, the kid is here every day, right? It may take the kid a month to get what it took in the past. Maybe it took the kid 2 weeks to learn the material. It may take a month. So we as educators need to be patient with ourselves, just like we give grace to our students and our families. We need to also give grace to ourselves and know that we are in this together. We are there. We wake up every morning with smiling faces to see our students. That's why we do what we do. But yes, the anxiety is real. It's also real when you think about yes, we are living in the middle of a pandemic. It never went away. We went back to school, but the pandemic continued.
Yeah.
You have kids who are, they come to school and sometimes they are dealing with positive cases in their home or with themselves. A lot of educators and school administrators were spending a lot of time with contact tracing. Our day-to-day is really trying to figure out which students might have to pause, which students can continue, and that can be very traumatic for a teacher to have to consistently experience the, I'm planning this for my class, but now I have to pivot because I have some of my kids who are not here because they're not well, or they've been a close contact. So yes, the anxiety is real for educators.
And you said something that I think is important, not just for educators, but for parents and students. And we need new ways to measure success. Not just so that we go easy on ourselves, because of course students are expected to make benchmarks, et cetera, but really just to reframe the way we think of success. And maybe the way we measure success in January is not the same way that we do it in February, because in January, right now, we're in the midst of this spike, right? And speaking of the spike, not every school in a district, let alone every district, every city, every state, is addressing it the same way. So we have families. If you have students in 2 different schools, you may have 2 different re-entry plans in your own family. Some schools are re-entering the same way they exited in December, whatever that policy was. Some schools have gone virtual. Some schools are saying if you have a PCR test within 48 hours and wear an N95, you're welcome on campus. If not, you are not. How do we, I'm going to ask you how to address that. But before we do that, I want to see Christina's comments, because Christina's comments are going to be more important than mine. She says, love hearing pandemic grief has many different forms: change in school environments, missed opportunities and significant school moments, student and friend socialization issues, changes in sports or clubs, and academic motivation are just a few. We agree, Christina. We really, as parents and educators, need to remind ourselves that just because students re-enter, whether it was the re-entry in August, September, or this in January, they may still be feeling this. Okay, So now, how do you think that families can best address this? It's almost a nebulous situation here, the reentry. It's happening this week in some form or the other. What should we be on the lookout for our students? How should we help them through this, no matter what the process is for their school?
Right. No matter what the process is with the school, as you mentioned, different school districts and different programs across the nation, very close to each other, many of them, as you mentioned, in the same household, may have a different reentry plan. But no matter what that plan is, I would encourage families to really focusing on what is best for your child, what is best for your family. We know our kids, right? We know that we may have to kind of go back and really talk through some things that we talked about back in August or September as families when our kids were getting ready to go back to school, right? We may have to revisit those conversations and understand that it really is okay in the sense that we're all in a unique, every area is unique. I know that some school districts are making decisions based on numbers. It's a quantitative decision between the school district and the health department in many cases. And so we need to be honest with our children and explain those decisions to them, how it came about. Most school districts lay out a plan and have explained to families why they're either going virtual or why they're not going virtual, or why they are having more testing in designated areas across their school districts. So it's really important, I feel like, if our kids and our families can understand the why behind the decisions, it really can make a difference with how we see how we see why they have decided what they decided.
I love that. Remind everybody, please communicate with your student on whichever level that they can accept it, why the school has chosen to do what they've done. And also let them understand what you already know is that you don't control that. We can't control what the school's policy is. We can only control whether we meet the policy. So as we're coming close to our time to end this conversation, if anybody has any comments, please put them in the comment section. But what can we do at home? Because we can't control what's happening at school. We can control how we tell our students to manage themselves in the school environment. But what can we do at home to help buttress our students?
So what I would like families to do at home, and I would encourage families to do at home, is number one, affirm your kids. Continue to affirm your kids. Have those positive conversations with them. Whether it's, you just remind them that they are resilient no matter what. This too shall end. That's what my parents shared with me, and my grandmother is 98 years old. She has been through a whole lot of different generations of ailments in the world. And, this too shall pass. So we need to remind our kids that we are navigating this. We're trying to understand it, but we need to affirm them. We also can practice self-care, not only as parents, modeling that for our kids, but teaching our kids how to take care of themselves, whether it's what they're intaking with nutrition, the exercise, things that they're listening to, things that they're putting into their bodies, into their spirits, into their minds, just really practicing that self-care with our kids. And then also just, learning is, we don't have to depend on the school or the school building for learning. Let's take advantage of different learning opportunities with our kids. For example, you can have your kids help you prepare a meal or help you create a project. It doesn't have to be something that is an all loss or an opportunity that's all missed. So I would, again, definitely encourage self-care, affirming our kids, and doing things together as a family that brings that positivity and reassurance to your children.
Wonderful. I'm going to throw up a couple of comments, and I believe I have a question. I'm going to put them up and read them, and then we're going to go back and address them. We're going to say Happy New Year and sign off. We have one here that says, I agree. I've chosen to keep my kids from school. That's an option. And we speak openly about our feelings. Thank you. I have a question that is, how do you get teens to open up and talk about their experience and how they are doing? Thank you, Kristen. That's important.
Yes, that is an important question. Sometimes talking is silent. Our kids talk to us in a silent way. So opening up to us, sometimes we just have to pay attention to them, watch what they're doing, watch what they're saying or what they're not saying. And just making sure that our kids know that when they are ready to speak to us with words, that we are right there, and just remind them. One thing that we can do is, if our kids are not ready to talk to us about their feelings, is I always encourage parents to, especially starting this new year, consider journaling with your kids. You can write them things and have them. A lot of times our kids are more comfortable writing things down. We see this a lot with students at school. They might not volunteer answers, but they'll write their answers down. So we can do that as parents as well. So if they're not ready to openly speak to you, then offer other ways of communication.
Thank you. Thank you. That's important to remember. We have a couple comments all affirming what you said and thanking you for your time. I second and third the comments in the comment section. Thank you for your time and spending time with us. We are at the end of our discussion live, but this discussion can continue in the comment section with our viewers discussing amongst themselves. Tomorrow, please join us at the same place, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, for Coffee with Jen and Sharon. They are two moms who pick a topic every week and they discuss it with their coffee and hot beverage, and you should join them and do the same. It's a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good luck with your reentry. Lukisha, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much, Kamira, and I really appreciate being part of this time today with your programming organization. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.